What did you say this is?
What a day.
What a day.
What a day. What a day. What a day.
What a day.
With Joe Lowry.
Hey everybody, Joe Lowry, what a day, and my guest at this time is no stranger to the world of professional wrestling. He's a second-generation wrestler, 2019 Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Rookie of the Year. He currently wrestles for All Elite Wrestling. Please welcome to the show, Flyin Brian Pillman Jr.
Hey, Joe, what a day we got here. How you doing?
Hey, Brian, thanks for joining us today. Hey, big week for you and your tag team partner, Griff Garrison, the Varsity Blondes. You both took on MJF and Chris Jericho, the Inner Circle, on AEW Dynamite. Great feedback on social media for your match. I thought it was one of the matches of the night. You know, I got to ask you, what is it like to wrestle the likes of like Chris Jericho and others who have been in the ring with your dad some years ago?
You know, there's a certain tempo, there's a certain pace to those guys that came up in that era. And, you know, it's undeniable, you know, and you talked about the reception of the match, and you talked about, you know, how impactful it was for our careers. And, you know, I owe it all to Chris for giving us that opportunity to get in the ring. And it's very real. Wrestling's very real to Chris, and it's very real to me. And I think it comes back, and, you know, talking about my father too, I think it comes back to that Calgary training, you know, that hard style training, you know, it's in the way Lance Storm taught me, Jericho's former tag partners. You know, we don't take this business very lightly at all.
Right.
And we're not out there to go through the motions and come up with, you know, random stuff to do. We're out there to fight each other. We're out there to put on a great, you know, impactful show. So I think it was just a matter of the chemistry that me and Chris had when you look at, you know, where I was trained and who he came up with. And then also too, MJF has been a rival of mine since the beginning of my career. You know, I saw him on indie shows. My fifth match ever, I wrestled Joey Janela, and MJF was on the show. And that's when I first met MJF. And a number of indie people, and as time went on, I just kept running into them here and there, different training schools, different indies, and here we are both now at AEW. We're butting heads again. You know, we had that run-in, we had that feud in MLW, which was, you know, critically acclaimed. You know, it was very high ratings. You know, we did incredible viewership and ratings for that company. So as you can see, that this rivalry between me and Max is going to bloom into the future as well. You know, this is going to be something, you know, that is going to go on for perhaps the next 10 years. So
yeah, I was going to say, is that on the radar with AEW now? You and MJF kind of going along the road there, picking up where you left off.
You know, I think we're going to come back around to that. I think that this tag match was a great kind of starting point. You know, to kind of to kind of get in the ring with Chris and test myself. And also for Griff, really the important thing was for Griff Garrison to get his revenge on MJF for what he said.
How did the AEW thing come about? I know you with MLW, OVW. I don't read the dirt sheets, but I do see the headlines online and so forth. And it looks like everything was abruptly ended when you went to All Elite Wrestling. I mean, were you on AEW's radar at the time, or how did that all come about? I
was actually at the very first pay-per-view ever, Double or Nothing. Well, not the very first pay-per-view ever, but the first AEW pay-per-view, Double or Nothing in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand Arena. So I think that through my relationships on the indies, you know, AEW is very much a company that draws real new raw talent from the indies. So when I talked about my relationships with Max on the indies and all these other guys that came up, I think it was a natural fit for me, and I think I was definitely on their radar. Right. I think I've been on people's radar probably since my first match, if I'm quite honest with you. but you know, again, other opportunities came up. You know, MLW it had been a great opportunity at the time. We were running on top. We were running hot for a while with them. But you know, when you introduce something that's life altering, like a pandemic, and then refusing to release said talent during said pandemic, in my opinion, it's not a very fair decision to make. And instead of staying home and playing it safe and pretending that I was being a good person by not chasing my dream and not getting out there and wrestling.
Yeah.
I decided after a couple months of strict locking down and quarantining that I was going to get back out there.
Right.
And with all that bided up energy, with all that, antsiness and built up aggression, I went out and I started training in speakeasy gyms and underground, training locations throughout the United States. And then eventually, once things started opening up, I said, you know what, I want to train at the greatest school in the country. And while I originally trained with Lance Storm in Calgary, Alberta, it didn't dawn on me until I started running around training in the States that the best school in the world probably is the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow.
And once I showed that initiative and went down to Atlanta,
that's
what sort of started my scouting of being at AEW. And I attribute a lot of that to QT Marshall giving me an opportunity. So.
Right. Now, Lance Storm, I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves because he's trained so many wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
You come across wrestlers' bios here and there, and you have them on the show and all that, and all of a sudden they say, "Yeah, I was trained by Lance Storm." You're like, "Whoa, another one!" So, I mean, he does not get the credit he deserves, but obviously he helped pave the way for you, and then of course you going on to the Nightmare Factory. Now, recapping a little bit, you're a college graduate, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you've done the corporate thing. You work 9 to 5, and I think I saw on somewhere down there you didn't want to be that average Joe at the end of the bar anymore. So when did it click in your head that you said to yourself, "Hey, I want to pursue what my dad did and become a professional wrestler"? I mean,
it's funny. Obviously, it probably built up over time. I mean, at the age of 13, I think I was sleeping on my best friend's floor. That's who I was living with at the time. My friend Paul, and I told myself, I said, one day this is all going to be worth it. One day all the starving and the sleeping on the floors and the moving home to home and not having anywhere to call my own home. And here I am in Jacksonville. I have my own house. I'm 13 minutes from the arena and 15 minutes from the beach. So it all came full circle. But really, I don't know if I've ever told this story on a podcast before, but really the tipping point for me, it's funny you said, be the average Joe at the end of the bar. Got my degree in business information systems, got a job right out of school. The last day of class, I got immediately picked up for an opportunity because of my skill set in technology and business management. Got the job, instantly killed the interview, was making, pretty good money as far as relative to the cost of living where I was living.
Sure.
Moved in with a couple of my best friends from high school. We had a nice house, but something was missing. Like you said, you're going out to the bar, you're meeting people. There's just not that spark. And I went out with this girl that I was really interested in. And I was like, oh, this is great. I dressed up nice. I did everything that society told me to do. Be a good guy, get cleaned up, pay your bills. Took a nice girl out for dinner. We went to the bar and, it wasn't even a couple hours and she'd already ditched me. She had ditched me for some asshole that offered her cocaine or something. Yeah, I mean, it is unreal how
that's the average Joe story. I'm telling you.
I was oblivious to the fact that of how the world works, and I didn't understand that my body and my personality didn't really gel with the average 9 to 5 setup. So like literally that facing that, like this was literally the moment, like literally facing that rejection that night at the bar.
Yeah.
The next day, like the next morning, I called Stone Cold Steve Austin and I was like, "Hey, I need to become a wrestler. Like this isn't cutting it."
Right.
And that's what people don't understand. Is like you have if you don't sit and wallow in your depression and anxiety and what if I did this, what if I did that. Just go out there and do it. Make the calls. Wake up one day and just chase greatness, and that really kicked off my life for me, really.
That's
so thank you to that woman. Thank you to that woman that rejected. Thank you for not making it easy for me.
I'd be surprised. Has she tried contacting you since?
Oh no. It wasn't that. It wasn't somebody that I ever want to speak to again. But it was she just happened to be the catalyst.
Yeah.
For
I used to call
it. Like I dated her for 2 years. It was like a literal first date thing. I was just like, God damn it. I was like,
something tells me I bet you know who you are now, though.
Yeah, they all do. But you're right. Once you start having success, once you start making it somewhere, they all start coming, like people I haven't talked to in a long time. Hey, I see you're doing well. And I appreciate that. But then you get the girls that are like, oh, why did we never hang out in high school? And it's like, well, you weren't interested in that, and I'm not interested now. So
it's funny. Kudos to you, because I call it square peg, round hole type thing. A lot of people go through life. I did it, to be honest with you. I was a 9-to-5er. I went to school. I actually went to broadcasting school when I got out of the Navy and was in it. And then my first wife passed, and I fell into that. I had to take care of the kids 9-to-5 rut. And I became one of those, I called it zombie land. I'd get off the train and I'd see all these people just like zombies going to work. And I'm like, I can't do this. This is not me. So I called it like square peg, round hole type thing. Mm-hmm. And I got back into it. And now I'm chasing my dream. And here I am interviewing you, and you're telling me a similar story. So, I think that's awesome. It's very inspirational, by the way, because you are younger, obviously. So that is probably a good story to tell kids who are out there that aren't chasing their dreams. They're just literally just dreaming about it instead of doing something. So, congratulations on that front. Now, obviously, you're Brian Pillman's son. You look like your dad. You're reminiscent of your dad. You got the goddamn mullet. I love the mullet because I used to have a mullet. I don't anymore. Do you find it hard to live up to your dad's reputation, or is that an issue with wrestling? Or
well, I thought originally it would be extremely hard, and even my trainer Lance Storm had warned me of the expectations that would be placed on me. Right. And the expectations are high, and the pressure has always been high. But I think my saving grace here is that the business is a lot different. The industry is a lot different. It's a lot easier to get into wrestling.
Yeah.
So the fact that everything's like Lance was worried that everything being filmed, everything being online would expose my flaws and my weaknesses. But in all reality, because everything is filmed and online, there's so much wrestling out there. There's so much going on that, and instead of picking it apart, and it doesn't expose the business, anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like you can have a handful of bad matches out there online. And no one's going to go, oh my God, wrestling's fake, But back then, because they were protecting that illusion, it was like you had to be super, super solid before you went out on TV.
Exactly.
But now it's like we know, the business isn't as protected anymore. Social media gives people a platform. Social media has been a huge part of my success as well.
Sure. Yeah.
My father didn't have access to that, so he didn't. I'm not necessarily utilizing the same strategies that he utilized.
Right.
Now, he was a pioneer in the sense that he did have the internet, and he was using AOL. Later in his career when it started to become a thing. So he would have been.
What's that? What's AOL? No,
AOL Instant Messenger. So he would have continued to pioneer that social media aspect, but it just wasn't that era for that.
Right.
And I think also the style of wrestling today is different. So that kind of helps me. I don't really have to perform the same way he did in order to garner a reaction. And a lot of ways too, it's like when you look at the schedules and stuff and the way that guys used to work back then and everything. So there's a whole lot of differences in the industry,
right,
which make it, a little easier for me to become myself and to show my distinction, right? And the fact that I didn't choose to pursue an opportunity right away at the Performance Center, I decided to go to the Indies, and really find myself, you know what I mean? Because, you always hear that they might try to control or tell you what direction to go. And as a creative young man, I didn't want to be, pushed in any direction. I didn't want people to say, be your dad, or I didn't want them to say, don't be your dad.
Yeah.
I just wanted to find out for myself what parts of him were natural to me. Right. Because let's face it, I have his genetics. And then I wanted to find out what parts of him were just not me. And even Arn Anderson said on a podcast, is like that I carry myself a whole lot different than my dad did, because the business was a lot more secretive back then. And he was portraying this character, there was a lot more politics back then. And I think that, there is, to this day, there's still some politics, but I think AEW is a very friendly environment. We're very much a team environment.
Right. Now, I've interviewed.
Everybody wants everybody to succeed here. So.
Now, I've interviewed a few AEW wrestlers, and one thing is for sure is that AEW obviously is not the WWE in a lot of sense. They've dealt with the pandemic, I think, unbelievably. The ratings show that. You guys are crushing NXT, literally crushing them, to the point where they're probably going to have to move nights sooner or later. But I think, Tony Khan, he brings that fresh element. It's like the new element with the old element combined, like what old is new again type of thing, which is definitely missing in this sport because I grew up in the 80s, pre-Hogan, post-Hogan, and then, of course, the Attitude Era. My son grew up with that. But you could tell after a while it was just getting so stale. Yeah. And to me, I think WWE dropped all with the pandemic because if there's any organization out there that could probably fill an arena to whatever capacity they can at this time, it'd be but they choose not to do that. I think it's hurting them. Obviously, you have safety conditions and all that, but AEW, to me, you guys are great. How does it feel? I mean, I ask this question a lot. How does it feel to wrestle in front of just a handful or, a third of what the crowd could actually be? Because I see on Dynamite, the crowd's pretty spread out, except for the ringside. But it's pretty spread out. How is that reaction for you? Are you still getting that jolt, that extra adrenaline rush that you would get normally with a packed house?
It's interesting because, we do live shows and we have some tape shows. And the difference in it is almost, I play, I'm not worried about who's out there and who's not. And when we have the boys ringside, we have some faces ringside, they're going to react and they're going to react to the wrestling anyways, because they're fans too. We're all fans of it. So we know what's good and we know what's not. So if my guy's ringside, if Austin Gunn is popping for it, he's making noise, that gives me the adrenaline. But on our live show days, we have a good number of fans there. The building's always filled up to our, legal capacity. Right. Exactly. So because the Daily's place is sort of an auditorium and we have the ability to, create that noise, I think it's a blessing to be able to wrestle at AEW. And even during the pandemic, I was able to find work in the South where fans were generally allowed to attend shows. So, but yeah, man, it's so different, like what used to, right before the pandemic on March 18th of last year.
Oh yeah, I remember that day.
My last match was in Tijuana, Mexico, in front of 2,500 people. Wow. In Reno, Mexico. Like it was the most insane thing ever to go from that super big high, that super big adrenaline rush with me and Davey Boy Smith, again, another tag team. So I always say I'm not a tag wrestler, but Jesus Christ, I am. I always tag people. So I don't know why I think I'm anything. I don't know why I think I'm not. But
sometimes you don't choose your own path. You know what I mean? So things.
Like on the Indies, I wasn't a tag wrestler, but in companies, I have been. In MLW and AEW, I've been a tag wrestler.
So I got a couple of questions here from a couple of Whatta Day fans. They wanted me to ask you. So the first one comes from Baby Cakes, and she asks, have you ever been on WWE's radar, and would you ever go to the WWE after your stint with whatever?
I think it's more of a matter of who I am personally and the timing and my journey and my path. And my pathway has brought me here to AEW. Okay. But I can't look. I expect to be at this company for at least the next 5 to 10 years, so I can't look that far ahead in the future. I thoroughly believe that WWE will still be around. Yeah, and I'm very confident that AEW will as well. Yeah, they will. I think it's a matter of the ebb and flow of the business. What stories I'm going to tell at AEW and what stories might left to be told at WWE. But if I'm completely honest, I don't feel that gravitation towards the WWE. I look at the roster, and then I look at the history of my father, my last name, and I look at AEW's roster, and there's a lot more stories to be told. I get to work with Dustin Rhodes and Cody Rhodes, and we've already seen a little story told with Jericho and our history and how my father influenced him, and so and I think WWE is a very good product. No offense to them. I don't see my personal, I don't want to say that my whole gimmick is who I am, but I can't escape it, right? I can't escape it. So the people that are writing these stories and the people that are booking these matches are going to want to utilize my family history to tell these stories. And I just think that AEW is the place for me to be.
Awesome. All right. Next question is from Jack West in California. He asked, who were your favorite wrestler or wrestlers growing up?
So as a young kid, I really liked the Hardy Boys. Those were my number one. And then Chris Jericho, as I started to get older and started to understand the business a little more, I started to really appreciate what Chris has been doing. And then into my 20s, once the whole revolution of the Indies and NJPW and Ring of Honor, which ultimately culminated in AEW, I started to become a real fan of Kenny Omega.
Right.
Because of his, his enthusiasm and the way he can, the way he can sell. And he's a performer. I'm very into the Shakespeare. I'm very into the performance aspect. Yeah. So despite the incredible athlete he is and the things he can do, he's very animated. He's very, everything is so urgent. And to me, wrestling should be that way. Wrestling should be urgent. Everything should be dramatic, right? We're in a ring. We're fighting each other.
All right, last question. This is from @WhattaDayJoe. Oh, that's me, by the way.
Goddamn.
Where does Brian Pilmer Jr. see himself in 5 years?
Well, when I first got into wrestling, Steve Austin, asked me, what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go and how I wanted to do it. And I told him, I said, Steve, I'm going to give this 4 years. I'll give it a 4-year shot. And if I'm not signed to a major company in 4 years, basically the time it takes to go through high school or college. Yeah. If I'm not signed to a major company in 4 years, then I'll hang up the boots. I'm not gonna force it. If these companies want to work with me, they want to work with me. So I did everything I could in those 4 years, and here I am. I'm working with AEW on a part-time contract. So to me, I've signed with a major company within that 4 years, and I'm very happy with where I'm at. So for the next 5 years, imagine how far we can go. Imagine where this can go. And I told myself last night, I was like, well, what would I do if I had another 4-year plan? I think in 4 years I could be the biggest star in professional wrestling.
Well, I can honestly say, since I've seen you wrestle, you have it. You have the total package, so to speak. You can talk, you can wrestle. You're a great storyteller in the ring. So, I mean, I can honestly see you as TNT or AEW champion within 5 years, no doubt about it. So, or a tag team champion, if that's the route that you're going to go soon anyways. So,
but and when you talk about the championships and the belts, I try not to tunnel vision on those things too much, because my goal is to win every match. But, those championship opportunities, they have to be opportunities that are set up that I can achieve. Right. So, my goal, my mindset is to become the best professional wrestler I can be. And then the championships and the achievements will come with that, right? It's like if you're just chasing after the championship, then you might not be working on the other aspects of your game, right? But if you just try to be the best you can be and try to be the biggest star you can be, then the belts and all that will follow, right?
Now you guys have live TV this week, correct? Are you guys live?
Yes, we're live Wednesday night.
Are you on the card at all? I haven't seen anything put up yet. I know it's beach break.
They have some different things announced yet, but it's pro wrestling. I don't find out until I get to the building,
Come on, I'm trying to get a scoop here. Well, Brian, I want to thank you very much for coming on the What a Day show. I wish you tremendous success. If you want to tell your fans how they can reach you, go right ahead right now.
Hey, guys, you can always follow me on Twitter at Flyin Brian Jr., and you can follow Griff Garrison on Twitter at Griff Garrison1. And you can follow me on Instagram at Flyin Brian 41. And that's about it. I don't do Facebook. I don't do anything else.
Facebook. Yeah, I got to love that. All right, Brian, I want to appreciate your time here. Good luck with everything in AEW. Maybe down the line, we'll check in again with you.
Thank you, Joe. What a day.
All right, everybody. I'm Joe Lowry. What a day.
What a day.